No one gets characters like Geoff Johns does. This man is what happens when you let a fanboy write comics and it actually works. The dedication this man has for DC Comics is absolutely unreal. I mean, run after run, Johns just knocks it out of the park. He's literally done it all. You can name almost any DC hero, and their definitive run was probably written by Geoff Johns. He's taken characters no one ever cared about and made them A-tier heroes. He's created his own characters, which then go on to become fan favorites. He's written almost all the big-name heroes and redefined most of them. Hell, if you can make me care about Hawkman, one of my least favorite DC characters, and if you're wondering why, go check out my video on that. If you can reinvent him, then you know you're doing something right. With every new book he jumps on, he always adds a ton of new mythology to the character. But the impressive thing is, it never feels forced. Plenty of writers come in and try to redefine the character they're writing. And I mean, I don't blame them. These characters have been doing the exact same thing for decades, so it's nice when an author tries to spice things up. But comic fans are brutal. If you try to change anything about these characters, there are plenty of people, including myself, who will complain for years on end. And rightfully so. Keeping with continuity and character actually allows for some character growth in this medium. In a world with no true ending, and things are too confusing so let's make them more confusing reboot every couple of years, it's nice for characters to stay true to who they are. It's just annoying when someone new comes onto a book and just doesn't honor the characters. That's what's so special about Geoff Johns. Everything he adds to his books feel like a completely natural progression for the character. He doesn't bring his ideas to the characters, he looks at the characters and sees what the natural next step is for them. But Johns uses one technique over and over to make his stories work, and it's the number 7. The number 7 shows up all over Geoff Johns' work. There's the 7 Lantern Corps in his Green Lantern run, the 7 Seas of Atlantis in his Aquaman run, the 7 Magic Lands in his new Shazam run, the 7 Deadly Sins in his Justice League run, and he even worked on 52, and when you add 5 plus 2, you get 7. Alright, that last one's probably pushing it. And the story device is such a great way to explore the universes of these characters. Let's start with the most obvious, the 7 Lantern Corps. So we all knew that Green Lantern rings are based off willpower, but that begs the question, what is Sinestro's ring powered by? Sinestro is Green Lantern's greatest nemesis, and he's always had a yellow ring that no one ever really questioned. Like, why is it yellow? That's when Johns developed the emotional spectrum. Each color on the emotional spectrum represented a different emotion, and the further you got from the center of that spectrum, the more unstable the emotion was. Red for rage, orange for avarice, yellow for fear, green for willpower, blue for hope, indigo for compassion, and violet for love. And this idea evolves so naturally out of the established Lantern mythos. I already mentioned Sinestro, but the Green Lantern also fought the Star Sapphires, who just happened to have violet rings. So Johns comes along and says, yeah, all these different light, yeah, they all come from the same spectrum. He even turns the dumbest parts of Green Lantern mythology into something actually kind of cool. Originally, the Green Lanterns had give me a sec. A weakness to yellow. I mean, how stupid of an idea is that? There is an actual time where the Flash used a yellow umbrella to counter Green Lantern. The only thing it was good for was a ridiculous story in All-Star Batman, where Batman calls Robin a retard, forces him to paint an entire room, including themselves, yellow, and drinks lemonade to flex on Green Lantern. Yeah, that book was ridiculous. But Johns explains that of course yellow is a weakness, because it's the color of fear, the natural opposite of willpower. This use of 7 Lantern Corps works as a great world-building technique. We go from Lantern Corps to Lantern Corps and see what makes each of them different. We get the Red Lanterns, who are basically a space biker gang, the Sinestro Corps, who are basically space Nazis, and the Blue Lantern Corps, who are basically space monks. Just by setting up the premise of 7 Lantern Corps begs the question of what they are. It creates interest. He does the same thing with the Kingdoms of Atlantis. Now, this was never really fleshed out in the comics, because the Rise of the Seven Sea arc is forever in limbo, next to Merry Man and any meaningful character development for Tim Drake. But this idea was used in the Aquaman movie, and in there we get to see how each of these kingdoms are different, or just non-existent. And Johns is doing the exact same thing in his new Shazam run. He introduces the 7 Magic Lands. Each land is a different world, one of which is home to everyone's favorite talking tiger. No, not him, Talkie Tawny. And we even get to see some great lore about Mr. Mind, everyone's favorite talking caterpillar, who tried to rule all the Magic Lands. Each idea just makes so much sense. Or at least as much sense as you can make in comics. I honestly think this technique works so well for developing a universe. As soon as we traveled to the Funlands in Shazam, I immediately wanted to see the other lands. The use of the number 7 creates this vast mythology that begs to be explored. But Johns isn't the only one to use this technique. Plenty of popular movie franchises use different factions as a way to build the worlds, and it works just as well. Harry Potter has the 7 Horcruxes, The Hunger Games has the 12 districts, Divergent, not one of my favorites, has those house things or whatever, which reminds me, Harry Potter also has those 4 houses in Hogwarts. The MCU has the 6 Infinity Stones, Black Panther has the 5 tribes of Wakanda, Lord of the Rings has different races. You see what I'm getting at. This is a super effective world-building technique, and Geoff Johns mastered it. Let's take a look at a character like Shazam. There's a lot of different areas to explore in his mythology. He has ties to magic, so you can talk about the Rock of Eternity and the rest of the DC magical characters like Zatanna or John Constantine. He has the Marvel family, so you can bring in the different members of his family to talk about. There's also all the different villains he has. I mean, Black Adam has ties to ancient Egypt, so you can go and explore there. What I'm getting at is that these characters have plenty of their own worlds to explore, but Geoff Johns just goes crazy with it. By introducing the Magic Lands, now we have so much new mythology to explore. How does the Zootopia-like society of the Wildlands work? What happened to the animals there that they hate humans so much? How does the game in the Game Lands work? Who started it? How do you lose? He just creates so many new areas to explore. There's never a lack of story because Johns always has somewhere new to go, and particularly somewhere that the audience actually wants to see. I want to see a Lantern Corps powered by rage or greed and what that would look like. I want to see how the kingdoms other than Atlantis evolve differently than Atlantis did. Johns is a master of character, and he knows how to build the worlds of these characters. Even though he uses the number 7 a lot, his ideas always feel fresh. It's never him pushing his agenda onto the characters, he expands on what's already there. And that's a balance that a lot of writers find hard. But if you want to build a world to expand on something new, just remember, the answer is always 7.